Breaking news out of our HQ studios up there, of course, in New York with the Mets, and Noah Syndergaard has been shut down for 6 weeks, according to manager Luis Rojas, saying that Syndergaard is dealing with inflammation in his right elbow, but does not have any structural damage. This, of course, stemming after working his way back into the lineup. His best case scenario is supposed to come back in mid-June, but now looking like more like August and September. This after being pulled from a minor league rehab game on Tuesday with some soreness in his pitching elbow. The 28-year-old lasted only 1 inning in his second start in the Class A at St. Lucie. All right, let's bring in our Jim Bowden with more on this. And Jim, your reaction to this, a guy that was working his way back but now shut down, it seems, almost till late in the summer here.
Yeah, it's really a setback for the New York Mets, who are really counting on Syndergaard for July, August, and September in a pennant race. I mean, this was a key cog in that rotation. So this is a huge setback. And anybody that knows Thor and was watched Syndergaard in the rehab, he's been going at it 100% all the time. And you have to wonder if the Mets were just too aggressive and if they didn't really put the reins on him as much as they should. And I think this re-injury to Syndergaard, it's good news that it's not torn again and that it's structurally okay, but the fact that you got to shut him down for 6 weeks, then you're going to have to take another 6 weeks to get him going again. For all intents and purposes, this season could be lost for him. But I think from an industry perspective, it's a wake-up call to the Red Sox, who are trying to bring Chris Sale back. It's a wake-up call for the Yankees trying to bring Luis Severino back, which is you really have to take your time and not push it. And you watch Syndergaard in these rehab outings, he's been throwing 96 to 99 miles an hour, and you wonder if they didn't just do too much for him. But this is a huge setback for the Mets, and it also brings up the big question when he gets to free agency at the end of the year. Do you offer him the qualifying offer, or do you just put him on the marketplace here? And that's going to be a very interesting decision for the Mets. But in terms of the pennant race, this is a bigger setback than people think, because they were really counting on him being that number 2 starter behind DeGrom.
You mentioned it there, Jim. I want to put you in that front office. If you're looking at this, you know Noah from the past of what he's been able to do when he's healthy. If you're the Mets here, are you looking at him in free agency and giving him that qualifying offer based on, now the injury at this point?
Well, you're going to have to see how he comes back from this. I mean, the fact that you've shut him down, what's the elbow going to look like in 6 weeks? Does 6 weeks become the year? And then when he does come back, what are the chances of staying healthy? I think the biggest question, or the best way to answer your question is, what are the medical people going to tell me come October in terms of the chances of him staying healthy going forward? And will he be able to pitch at the end of this year in August or September and show people that he can be the guy that he was prior to the Tommy John surgery? Those are questions that still need to be answered. So I can't really go that far with you outside of the fact that had he come back and been able to pitch right now, he definitely would have gotten the qualifying offer. Now it's in question.
All right, it's a wait-and-see thing there. When you mention injuries, it's been kind of the running thing with the Mets this season. You look at the list here. It's been longer than this at points of the seasons here when we're talking about the injury list for the Mets. And when you see this, Jim, do we have a problem inside the organization where you just can't keep guys healthy now that you have Noah Syndergaard added to this list?
I don't really think this is a New York Mets issue. I think it's an industry issue. We're on pace right now to break the record for the most days on an injured list in baseball history. And we've got injuries everywhere. And I think the pandemic and the ramifications of it has more to do with it than anything else. Players have had personal trainers more than ever before over the last year and a half. Teams, even in spring training, were not conditioning together as a team. You're seeing a lot of hamstring injuries that really are injuries that should be prevented with proper training. You're also seeing the results of all of the time and effort we spent the last 7 years increasing velocity for pitchers, improving spin rate. What we're seeing, though, is more wear and tear on the elbows and shoulders, because guys that were throwing 92, 93 are now throwing 98, 99, and that's led to injuries as well. What's unfortunate with the Mets, and what separates them really from the other 29 teams, is the amount of injuries to star players they're dealing with. On your graphic, you just showed 3 of their top 5 starters on the injured list. On that graphic, you showed 3 of their starting 4 infielders, including Pete Alonso, on that list, everyone except Lindor. And then you got Michael Conforto, their best outfield offensive bat, all of them going down. It's amazing they're still at the top of the standings there in the NL East, but to be able to overcome all those injuries has been remarkable, really.
You're hanging by a game and a half over the Marlins, as you mentioned there in the standings, and you talked about pressure. Let's talk about Jacob deGrom, of course, knowing now that you might not see Thor out there for a couple games. How much pressure is it on him to kind of keep this thing rolling for the Mets?
Yeah, I don't think there's any pressure on DeGrom. He's the best pitcher on planet Earth, and he'll continue to do that. You give him run support, he'll give you a chance to win every single night that he's on the mound. I do think it's going to bring some pressure on, can Carlos Carrasco come back and be healthy? Can Taijuan Walker come off the IL and be as effective he was in the first half? I think there's more pressure on those two pitchers going forward than there is on DeGrom, because I think we know what we're going to get from Jacob.
All right, give me the fantasy angle here, Jim. If we're thinking about Noah Syndergaard coming back, as I mentioned, the timetable maybe August or September, are you willing to take that flyer on Thor when he comes back?
Yeah, so I think it depends on your fantasy league. You know, if you have a limitation on the injured list, say you're limited to 2 or 3 spots, don't waste your time, release the player, move on. That's not enough spots. If you have unlimited IL, then yeah, keep him on the IL and see if he can come back. I think the only scenario where I know I would keep him is if it was a dynasty league, because I really want to see if he can come back, you know, in September. This guy still is a number 2 type of starter on a championship team and still can be an impact starter if you can get that elbow healthy. So dynasty league, I say keep him. A league with a small IL list, dump him. And if you have unlimited IL, then keep him. What do you have to lose?
Yeah, most people probably keep him just for the flow there, as we always see throughout his career there. Jim Bowden is always tapping in on the breaking news. I know Syndergaard shut down for 6 weeks for the Mets. Taking a look, as Jim just mentioned there, the National League East, of course, it's been a stacked card. Not that much of a gap between the Mets, who are leading right now, 22-20, only a game and a half above the Marlins and Braves, who are right behind them. But as you see, they're still the favorites. Of course, that might be impacted if you don't have Noah Syndergaard later in that second half of the season. The Braves and Phillies right behind them, but the Braves, they keep on trending upwards in that division alone.
And for more on the Syndergaard news, let's now bring in the former Major Leaguer and World Series champion, our Will Middlebrooks. Will, thanks for hopping on with us to discuss this. First of all, get your thoughts to the reaction here of Syndergaard basically put out for another 6 weeks and probably looking at another few weeks after that before he can even get back into the rotation. And what are your thoughts here on the Syndergaard news?
You hate to hear it, but I'm not surprised. This isn't Jamie Moyer. This isn't a guy who's going to go throw 83 to 86, slow curveball. You know, that's not who he is. He's a power pitcher. He's 6'6". He throws 95 to 100 with 3+ pitches with movement and velocity. That's a lot of stress on your elbow and your shoulder, your entire body, actually. So it would be uncommon if there wasn't a setback here. Luckily, they have an abundance of pitching depth, and that's where their strength is. They have Seth Lugo coming back next week, who's a Swiss Army knife. He can come out of the pen, he can start, he can close, he can do whatever you need him to do. And Carlos Carrasco, he's had a little bit of a setback too with his torn hamstring, but he's looking at late June, early July, so he'll be back before Syndergaard as well. They have tons of pitching. They just need some offense.
How much of the responsibility for this type of a setback goes on to the Mets as an organization because of the fact that, as you mentioned, he is such a thrower when it comes to his velocity and kind of how hard he throws the baseball? You said a setback maybe is inevitable in this, but was it really? And do the Mets as an organization bear some responsibility here for the fact that they're going to be without Syndergaard for an extended period of time?
The organization itself, absolutely not. No, I mean, he spends time outside of the organization as well here in Florida training at Cressy Sports Performance, where he has done a majority of his rehab process. So nobody's to blame here. This is just a product of a joint that's made up of small tendons and ligaments and a lot of force behind it. And it's a brand new elbow. This has to almost set in. It needs time to set in his body to learn how it works again. And he's not out, like I said, he's not out soft throwing. There's a lot of force. I've seen videos of him pitching. He's full force again. He looks like, in spring training even, he looked like he was already throwing 90 miles an hour again, which surprised me. So maybe he just started a little early. Maybe he ramped it up a little too soon. Or like I said, maybe it's just a product of how hard he throws the baseball.
Well, when you get a setback like this, obviously it doesn't just, it kind of throws a scare into you as well when you get this kind of inflammation after the Tommy John surgery. So what's your level of concern here that Thor can actually get back to throwing the way that we know he can?
He will. And all the players that I've been around in my career who had Tommy John or had a major shoulder or elbow surgery, the biggest thing is trust, is getting back on the mound, trusting that you can put it in that last gear, throw 95 to 100% of your capability velocity-wise, and know that you're not going to hurt yourself. That is the first hurdle to get over, and then it's command. We've seen that with Shohei Ohtani. He's 2 years removed from Tommy John, and he's still having command issues that he didn't have before because that touch and feel is the last thing to come with the rehab process.
He's going into free agency, so this is like a payday year for him, obviously, so it's disappointing. But Will, I mean, you've been on that player side as a player. I mean, how devastating is it to know that here you've got the opportunity to really cash in, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen? Now there's questions about whether the Mets even offer him a qualifying offer. So, I mean, as a player, from the player perspective, how devastating is this for Syndergaard in that regard?
Yeah, and that could have played into him trying to speed up the process a little bit, trying to get the velo up and show that, hey, I'm ready early. That probably played into that, but his track record will speak for himself. This is, like Jim said, this is a number 2, even number 1 on a lot of squads. He has a lot of baseball left. He's still young. Even though he's right around 30 years old, he's still got a lot of baseball left, especially with the new elbow now. He's going to be just fine. He's going to get paid plenty of money to come out and throw the baseball. Don't you worry, Noah. You're going to be just fine. He's going to come back healthy. It's going to take a little longer time. Yes, he's not going to get the amount of innings maybe he wanted this year, but if you're looking at the longevity of a career, space this out, slow it down, get on track, get yourself healthy, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Always looking at the big picture. He is our Will Middlebrooks, former player and World Series champion. Will, thanks for hopping on with us to talk about Noah Syndergaard.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.